Welcome to another episode of the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast, where we get to talk about trucking risk, and trucking insurance. This week on the show, we have Caleb Cron of Driver Verified. Welcome, Caleb.
Yay, Caleb!
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry, hang on now. And we'll throw some of that your way as well. Just what the heck. Sorry, nothing's too serious here, Caleb. Welcome.
Oh God, no, never. Don't even think that, Caleb. So,
Hey, Johnny, good morning. Welcome to our co-host, Mr. Johnny Farquhar of Summit Risk Solutions.
Good morning.
good morning, Caleb. How are you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Nice Friday morning, nice weather. Looking forward to the weekend.
Oh, yes. It's cooling off a little bit, so the fall is finally coming in. But hey, you know what? The sun's shining. I'm waiting for snow, but we're in no rush for that, so we won't anticipate that right yet.
Well, and John, you already mentioned that Caleb fits right in.
Yes.
I have to say, though, that his beard's a little darker.
Yeah, it's changing slowly with the seasons.
Something tells me it's got something to do with his seasoning. We're more seasoned than he is.
There we go. And speaking of seasoning, Caleb, can you please introduce yourself? Tell us what your background is, who you are working. What the heck is Driver Verified?
Sure.
But, who are you?
Sure. So my name's Caleb Cron, and I'm with Driver Verified. And I've been with them now. I was a co-founder and the president, and been with them now for a bit over 3 years. And basically, my background prior to that is I was working in software. Prior to that, working as operations for software, tech support, kind of the whole range. And then prior to that, I was at U of T in school, and I did that for many years until I just needed to leave and get working. And so that brought me here. And previous to school, I've worked in construction and manufacturing as well. I was a glass cutter for a while when I was younger, and then also worked as an iron worker for a couple of years too. So
Ironing clothes?
No. When I was actually, interestingly enough, that brings me to something I'm sure that we'll get to, which is I was one of those G licensed drivers driving a heavy commercial vehicle.
So, one of those illegal guys.
Well, yeah, it was still it was a full size, like a 1-ton pickup truck at the time, but certainly I would have been overweight, I'm sure, at times, hauling some things, and so that kind of brought me here. Roundabout.
What got you into the trucking industry with what your relationship is now?
That was basically a broker came to us and, just said, commercial auto broker, and I'm just running into problems every day. And that problem is trying to add drivers to policies. And basically he said, I've got some ideas as to I think it's not that difficult to kind of solve the problems that I'm having, but it requires a bit of tech. And so we just started talking. And it grew from there. That was already several years ago. And then it kind of grew from there, and we slowly developed the ideas and everything around Driver Verified, and then eventually started into the development of it.
Cool.
So how long has Driver Verified been around?
As a company, we've been around for more than 3 years now. And this year, we've been in our soft launch phase. So we took a while working on the back end. Because, we deal with sensitive information, we wanted to put a lot of effort into making sure that was all, wrapped up and tight. And then, work on the front side of it as well. And here we are.
Cool. Right. Good deal.
So you got to tell us now, you haven't told us yet what the problem is specifically that the broker came to you and said, how do we solve this?
Yes. So he said, I get clients coming to me. Sometimes they've already even hired the driver, and they'll just say, okay, I've got a new driver. I need to get him on a policy. And that's where the challenge comes in, because there is a lack of documentation. And there's also, more generally, there is a bit of a lack of awareness amongst drivers as to the documents that they should be retaining, the information they should be recording. And part of it is a driver education piece, and also encouraging drivers, getting them to know their worth. It's a profession. It's a profession, and it should be treated as such. And drivers should consider themselves as driving professionals. And part of that is documenting your experience and being able to provide some proof that this is what I've done. This is my skills, and being able to then sell it, to market it, to get a position. And then kind of where our real focus is being able to get added onto a policy. And so, we basically, Driver Verified is an online platform to get drivers to add their experience, document their experience, and, add any documents that they have, any information that's relevant. So our platform is for drivers, it's for owner-operators, it's for trucking companies or any company that employs commercial drivers, and then it connects them all with their broker. And so it's not a job board. Instead, it's something that, drivers are tracking their experience long-term, and everybody benefits from that. I mean, currently, for a lot of drivers, and admittedly for a lot of trucking companies as well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And that's, I'm referring to, documentation and getting hired on. It's something that's not, it's back of mind, and a driver is working somewhere and thinks, I don't need to kind of worry about my files, worry about documentation. That's kind of boring. But then, something happens. They change positions. They want to move companies, and then they need to get added. And when it's a problem, then it's a big problem for everybody. And so we're trying to, part of it as well, the education, educating drivers and companies too, that this is something that you should be thinking about all the time. On the company side of it, it's also maintaining driver files and maintaining compliance. You have a facility audit. You want to know that you've got everything in file that you need. And, and it also, what I mean when I say it affects everybody, I mean, it as well, looking at insurance rates. It's a hard market. It's just no fun for anybody. It's a big challenge. And, the more documentation that you have, the more you can make that argument of, you've got the experience. And so let's, that maybe can be the prompt to get someone added on, and maybe the kind of, prompt to that they don't have to go to facility, because that's the other thing we'd all like to avoid. Nobody wants to go to facility and pay those fees, but for a lot of owners, that is just a reality when you need equipment moving, and if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. But it's better for everybody to have more documentation. And, also if something goes wrong, if your company's involved in an accident and then you're facing some scrutiny, maybe you're facing an audit, maybe your insurance company wants to come and talk to you, and, to have those files accessible, it's really, that's the best you can do to kind of show, your due diligence, and then also, coupled with training as well, thing that we talk about a lot too. And I know it's a focus of both of yours as well.
Yeah. So how does this work then, this platform? So does the driver access it? Is it do it through the company or what? How do you get it started there from a driver perspective?
Yes, great question. So to start off, we wanted to make it very simple. And yes, drivers do access it on their own, and drivers have access to their information throughout the whole time, throughout their whole career. That's the idea here, is that, you leave, you go work somewhere else, you still have access to all of your documentation. And that is one of the biggest problems when a driver is going to get added somewhere new. That, when you change companies, you don't always leave on good terms, and there can be any number of reasons why that may be. but unfortunately it's a reality, and there's high turnover in a lot of trucking. And so you need to kind of be prepared that, you might need to change jobs, you might need to do it quickly. And, having those documents accessible to you as a driver, that makes the difference between, a day, 2 days, 3 days wages. And that's a big deal. So basically, we made it that a driver, I'll say it from the perspective of a driver, although again, we can talk about a bit, how the companies interact with this, and then down the road, how the broker gets this information. But to start off with, your driver, you can create an account in just a minute or two, just some basic contact information, and then you're set up. And then basically you can move over and start filling in what we call your driver profile. And in your driver profile, you record. We've basically gone through, we looked at, what's asked when drivers are applying to jobs. We looked at information that brokers are looking for, insurance brokers. And then we also looked at the information that the insurance company collects, and more of what they should be collecting, really, because they don't always have all the pieces to the puzzle either. So we basically looked at, what's all the relevant information we could possibly encourage drivers to collect, and we guide them through that process. We also ensured that our site is accessible through any internet browser, and it's mobile friendly as well, because we realize that a lot of people using our program, adding information, they're not going to be sitting at a desk right beside a filing cabinet. They're going to be out on the road, they're going to be on a break, and they just got a couple minutes. They want to add in some information. We made it so that you can kind of do it as quickly and easily as possible, and you can just do one step at a time. You don't have to create an account and then fill it in with every experience you've ever had. Instead, you build it up, you add information when you can, and you're kind of ultimately you're sort of painting a picture of your experience.
So it sounds like it's the driver's own qualification file.
Yes,
where
absolutely.
Therefore I could give access to another company or something like that.
Yep.
Chris, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, let's clarify the problem that you're solving.
Sure.
And as I hear it, and Caleb, please pipe in when I screw this up, but the problem is getting the drivers added to an insurance policy. They don't always have, it's not an easy process. And so for the company, they try to add the driver, and the insurers of smaller fleets want an experience letter from the past insurance company. And by the time this hurdle has been achieved, it's too late. You phone the driver up and he said, hey, I went to work for a larger company because they could hire me right away. And so the problem is the length of time it takes for the smaller fleets to get a new prospect approved to be able to join their company. And from the trucking company's point of view, I've got a piece of metal or a truck sitting there, not earning revenue. I'm still making my insurance payments. It's probably financed, and I'm disappointing my customers because I'm short one driver. And one driver on a fleet of 10, that's 10% of my freight, 10% of my revenue.
Absolutely.
And so this is the problem that Driver Verified is trying to address. Is that kind of it?
That is it. Yep. That's the central problem right there. And so we encourage drivers to, collect these letters of experience. And that's not always possible. I know that there's debate. People outside of the trucking industry will say, oh, the Employment Standards Act means that, drivers have to get proof, and this is happening. Anybody in the transportation industry says, this isn't happening. No, drivers are not getting the evidence that, they have this experience. Yeah. And, it's kind of, we also make the analogy of the divorce, once you are done with the company and you've left, it's not always so easy to get that information. While you're at the company and things are good, it's easier. It's still not always possible. I know that, some companies will be hesitant to give drivers their letter of experience because they don't want their drivers jumping ship. And this is something that I hear often from companies. But I've got to say, if you're giving your drivers that letter of experience, I like to think of it as, you're putting your trust in your drivers. You're demonstrating to your drivers that you are a trustworthy employer. And, ultimately as well, I don't think that a driver, that receiving that letter of experience is going to make them jump ship. I think there's going to be other, factors there that are going to make them decide to leave. So for those trucking company owners, I understand it's a sensitive issue and it's definitely a concern, but I don't think that providing your drivers with proof of experience is going to be, kind of the deciding factor of them leaving.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the problems, and I know Chris and I see this quite frequently when we go out to see clients to help them with their risk management practices, is drivers are terrible at keeping track of their own documentation, whether it be their abstract, a criminal search. I find a lot of problem when hiring drivers, particularly to go to the U.S., I'm urging customers to make sure you get a copy of their medical examination so that you can verify that the driver is eligible to go to the U.S. because there's some certain criteria that's not acceptable. And most drivers just give up their medical examination to the MTO when it's due and you never see it again. Yeah. And this sounds like a perfect platform to be able to store that information and archive it so that, hey, if I decide to, move to another carrier, well, let me give you a link to my profile, and it's got all my pertinent documentation in there.
Well, Johnny, let me ask you this. Yeah. How many drivers working for a fleet knows the name of the insurance company?
Oh, God, yeah, like pretty much zero.
Never mind the policy number, because we all know that it could be ABC Trucking, but really it's not ABC Trucking because it's Ontario Incorporated number doing business as ABC Trucking. Yes. And so to try to have the broker get the experience letter, well, first they need to know what insurance company was on risk. Well, the driver doesn't even know. And it's not like the States where we can go to the SMS, or of course, I guess it is like the States if they cross border where we can go and actually look it up. But that's very time consuming for the broker. And I think that's one of the things, Caleb, that you're also addressing is you're trying to make it easier for the broker. Because again, we're talking non-fleet and the broker isn't making a lot of money on non-fleet, but to do all this work and get the driver approved on that, my God, it takes forever.
Well, and the funny part, Chris, is to kind of strengthen what you're mentioning about the driver not knowing the insurance company, it's right at their fingertips.
Oh, yeah.
Because in every vehicle they operate, there's going to be a registration booklet, and with that registration is going to be a copy of the insurance pink slip or something. And it'll say right on there who the insurance provider is. And that's something drivers should be able to take note of to say, okay, I work for this company, and here was the insurance provider and their policy number, and archive it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we have kind of a user wizard when drivers are just setting up their profile. We basically have this user wizard guiding them through our requirements and just making recommendations of, hey, do you have this document? Do you have evidence of this? Add it. And, so the letter of experience from the insurance company, unfortunately, that is now kind of the be all and end all document. It used to be they would take reference letters from a trucking company. They'll take them as some kind of proof, but it won't be good enough as far as, really making the move to add someone to a policy. So,
and drivers need to make sure that they're diligent in that documentation process. Because one of the things is, and I've come across this with a couple of driver friends of mine who have worked for a company, and in this case, a company that does not have a fleet. They're like 5 or 6 power units, or were. And interesting enough, he worked for them for like 2-3 years, somewhere in that. And then when he left there to go kind of retire and go get another job, he gave the information to the new company to say, I used to work for this company. Oh, we're going to need an experience letter from the insurance. Oh, yeah, no problem. Their insurance company was this. And oh, by the way, here's their policy number. And sadly, he was never listed on that policy. Because the carrier did not notify the insurance provider. Oh, hey, here's the driver. His name's Mike, and, he's working with us. So they had no record of it. So this new guy could not hire him because he couldn't provide years of experience. And the sad part was, my friend, we'll call him Mike because it seems to fit, has 40 years driving experience. But they wanted the most current 3, and they wouldn't take anything before.
Well, Johnny, remember this, that for fleets, you only submit your driver's list once a year. So
Exactly.
if I'm a driver and I join a fleet the day after that list has been submitted, and I quit the day before, so almost a full year, but the day before it gets resubmitted, there's no proof. There's even the existing insurance company for a large fleet we're talking about, a company that has fleet status. I just lost a year's driving experience because that insurance company never knew I was there. And this is, I think, Caleb, part of the problem that you're trying to address.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, so good practice. A good practice would be, I see some brokers are doing this where they're working with their clients and saying, no more of this annual reporting. I want you to report monthly or quarterly so that they can keep up on this information and help these drivers that are looking for, when they make a change, I'm looking for that experience letter.
Yes. Yeah, and we encourage drivers. I mean, again, the letter of experience from the insurance company, that's one that we always say, if you can get it, it's the most important. But we also encourage, other information too. And as you brought it up, the liability slip, that's a huge one. You're in your truck, pull out the liability slip, take a photo of it. You've got the insurer's name. You've got the policy number. That is so important, because if you don't have that letter of experience, the only way to get there is to have the policy number and the insurance company. Right. And then there's other issues and other ways we can go about getting it then. But having just knowing the insurance policy number, and as you mentioned, is your name on the policy anywhere? Yeah. All important things to check and look. And underwriters too do have some discretion. I mean, they have their filed rules that they have to follow. Each insurance company has their set of rules that they've kind of established, and they're being regulated. They have to obey these rules, and so they kind of say, well, these are our requirements that we're obligated to follow. But there is leeway as far as being able to determine valid experience. And so that's why we encourage drivers just to collect all different kinds of pieces of information, like liability slips. We even encourage drivers to take a photo of the equipment you're using. Again, it's not a one item solution. You're not going to get a job just with a picture, but adding all of this stuff together, it's a puzzle that you're piecing together, and in the end, you're able to say, okay, maybe I'm missing a letter of experience for one of the jobs that I did recently, but for that job, I've got a wide range of other kind of proof of documentation, proof of experience, and then that can be the difference between not getting added at all and maybe the underwriter saying, okay, I'll add this driver, but we've got $1,000 surcharge or something like that, and the company owner would, in all cases, I would say happily pay, a surcharge. Even, I mean, I've worst case scenario, you go to facility and wind up paying a massive surcharge. But company owners will do it because they can't have that equipment sitting.
Yeah, I just thought of a great document that the driver should have in their possession or their electronic file, and that would be a copy of their road evaluation.
Okay, yes.
How many drivers actually get a copy of that? None that I know of. It's usually in their driver qualification file for the company they're working for. But in this case, if I'm creating my own virtual driver qualification file that is with me at any time, for every company that I work for, what would be great is to have that. That'd be great information.
Well, and John, I don't know the last time you did a road eval. I'm doing 4 of them tomorrow, but I always get the driver to sign the document. And I, for one, wouldn't be offended if the driver, and I have had this just once out of probably 30 or 40 road evals that I've done in the last couple of years. Only once did the driver say, "Can I take a picture?"
Yeah.
And I don't know
it's
why
a performance report.
But hey, sure, go ahead. Because this is an existing client of mine, and what we're doing, his record has improved dramatically. 2 or 3 years ago, this time of the year, right before winter starts, he has me out, and I do almost every driver in the fleet and just go with them and remind them of good driving habits and what winter's about and all that kind of stuff. So, sorry, that's a little self-promotion.
Well, it's
Sorry,
funny
Caleb.
because under U.S. regulation, there is a requirement to do a road evaluation and provide the driver with a certificate that they completed the road evaluation. So why not just give them a copy of the road evaluation along with that certificate, which provides proof, and cover your butt and just create more. I guess you can't say it enough, whether it become a driver or whether it be the company owner, document. Keep it all. Don't lose any of it. So.
Well, and I think what Driver Verified's partially addressing or trying to address is it gives the driver a tool to help them create a file folder of stuff that they can use.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Sorry,
it's
technical
interesting because
stuff.
Yeah, Caleb, you said even take a picture of the truck that you're driving. A lot of the younger guys today are on social media like crazy, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and they're probably taking selfies with their truck in the background. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, there's evidence I worked for that company. So why not archive some of that stuff? Sure, I might post on Facebook or Instagram, but also at the same time, I got to put that in my driver folder just in case, because these are accolades. Look at the equipment I operated. If somebody goes, well, what'd you operate? Oh, tractor trailer. Can you prove it? Yeah. Here's a picture of what I did. Here's some of the freight that I hauled. If it was a flatbed or something like that. Here's some of what I did. So.
And freight is a big one too. I mean, I've heard many stories now about the requirements that insurance companies are looking for when they're adding drivers. Is they're looking for freight experience. So, whereas previously it would just be like, well, the equipment, do you have that equipment experience? Okay, that's good enough. Now they're starting to say, what types of cargo do you have experience? And there are times where, if that previous experience they have, if it's not well documented enough and they can't kind of say, they can't kind of show in some way that they have that experience, then they're not added. And there's it's a problem for everybody.
Everybody's heard this before, but we are in a very litigious society, and everybody is trying to do their best at CYA, including the insurance companies, the insurance brokers, the owners of trucking companies. And this is something that truck drivers sometimes forget about, that they've got to prove everything they say today. Which Driver Verified, I think, goes a long way in assisting the driver in doing that. So, Caleb, I can't believe we're already getting close to our 30 minutes. It's unbelievable. It's been a great discussion. What is the cost to the driver?
So, creating a profile is always free. And that's for any user type, whether you're a driver, owner, operator, trucking company, you can create a profile for free and start saving your information there. I also want to say that any information that you add to your profile is yours. You own your data. We don't have any access to it. It's encrypted, and when you upload that information to your profile, that is your information. Only you have access to it. And when you go to share that information with your employer or with the insurance broker, anytime that you share your information, you have to consent to sharing that information first. And so, it's not, it's not a kind of job board with open access to your info. It's secure, and you always own it. All data as well is all stored in Canada. We don't cross borders. I know there's been some regulation that you don't have to do that anymore, but that's something that we consider pretty important to just limit the movement and keep it accessible only to the driver. And so then the cost comes when you order a report. And so currently, when you want to access that information, you purchase a report bundle that includes everything that you've added to your profile. And we're also introducing as well a subscription model as well, so that you could, alternatively subscribe, and then, you're a paid user. You can pull reports as much and as often as needed. And we'll be adding more features as well to that too.
So in my mind, I'm going either the trucking company or the insurance broker would likely be the subscription model type. The pay once to get my information to complete an application form is likely the driver type. Is that fair?
Yes, yes. Although all users will have access to both either a paid per report or a subscription, but absolutely. Yep. And we also see a brokerage subscription model as well that we're working on too, and we're working with some insurance brokerages just to get their feedback and their use of the program, get some details there and how to improve it. I mean, the other thing too is we're always looking to legislation to collect more relevant information. I mean, one example being when we ask about what vehicles you trained on, we now include whether it's the transmission type, whether it's manual or automatic. Okay. I know that legislation hasn't come into play yet, but that it's coming down the road that any new drivers have to be trained on manual if they're going to use a manual commercial vehicle. And so that's another piece of information that we collect, because there's always, these changes happening in the industry, and you've got to, as the driver, you've got to kind of know where it's coming from, and that you should be documenting all of this.
Well, and I just had a thought, and too bad I didn't have the thought earlier. But Johnny, we got to introduce Trucking Verified to TTSAO, the truck driving schools, because this is where, to me, if you got it introduced there, the drivers should be starting their file right there.
Yep, absolutely. So we had a fantastic meeting recently. With Lisa at the TTSAO, and we're in discussions with her, and we're really excited. And I've also I've had a couple visits to some driver training. We are working with Fanshawe College with their driver training program. I recently was presenting to their kind of newest cohort. We also work with the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada, and I've presented to their driver training cohort just on, again, I'd recommend doing it through Driver Verified, but even if not, it's just, important to know what you should be collecting, and that you should be collecting and documenting this as a driver. I mean, drivers, I know this is a topic that both of you discuss often, but, driving is a profession, and it needs to be treated as such, and drivers should know their worth. They have valuable experience, and it's not a job that anybody can do. And part of collecting these documents is sort of proving your worth as a truck driver. It's valuable. It's a very, very valuable skill to have, and you want to be able to show that, hey, you've got that experience. You know what you're doing, and then that will translate into getting a job faster, getting a lower insurance rate. And
even taking into account the number of carriers that they work for and the training that they complete through that process, whether it be online training or classroom training, most carriers provide you with a certificate of completion or some testing documents or something like that. Again, want to show your worth, driver? Take that information, load it up to your profile, build yourself this credential of a portfolio to give you the ability to say, oh, yeah, you want to know what I've done? Here, I'll give you access to my profile.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's more and more training, and there's always more training coming too. I was just at the IBAO, that's the Insurance Brokers Association of Ontario conference, to kind of see what's going on at that level and what they're saying. And it's just training. I mean, insurance companies are implementing training programs. They're getting brokers to kind of push them onto trucking companies. Trucking companies are implementing more training. And like you said, document all of it. You get any kind of training at any company, document it. And also, when we encourage users to add documents, they can be any format, because some users are going to have a nice certificate PDF. That's great. Maybe you've got a scanned copy, also great. Or maybe you've just got a snapshot with your phone of that certificate. Either way, it's valuable. Save it.
Yeah. Excellent. Great stuff, Caleb.
Beautiful. Caleb, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a great time.
Great conversation. Hey, I'd like to thank our guest, Caleb Cron with Driver Verified. Great conversation, Caleb. Glad we had you on the show. So, and it looks like you guys made it this far. You're still stuck in with us, so that's great. So, hey, give us a thumbs up. Give us a subscribe, and you know what? Don't be afraid. Hit that little dingy bell there so it'll let you know when the next one's coming up. So, and you know what? I want to thank our co-host, Chris Harris, he's our editor and our producer. He does all kinds of neat stuff, so it's awesome. I'm John Farquhar, and hey, we look forward to seeing you at the next Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast. Take care.